Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine18. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. I'm here with a VR to a tag started by my TarotTube friend Katey Flowers quite a while ago now. I had intended to make a VR and just never really got around to it. But then Wesley over at 22 Zines made a VR, and this kind of reminded me of the tag, and watching Wesley's VR made me want to make one again as well. So here is my VR to No Disclaimers Tarot. I am going to do my best to not give any disclaimers for my opinions in response to the questions in this tag, because that is the entire point. Okay, so I'm going to list the questions below, and I will timestamp my answers, and I will try not to be too overly laden with caveats, and I will try not to be too long-winded, but no promises. You know I ramble. So here we go. Number 1, what trends or tropes in tarot decks annoy you the most? Now, folks know that I do not like the pregnant empress, and specifically I do not like the pregnant empress in a broader context in which pregnant folks are not featured on other cards very often at all. I've made an entire video about that though, so I will leave that there, but I will say in terms of a kind of trope, I guess, that this is a part of that annoys me, that bothers me. Annoys is maybe even the wrong word. A trope that I do not like is when aspects of, say, like human embodiment, of which pregnancy is one for some folks, are used as kind of symbolic stand-ins for other things in ways that are reductive, shall we say. So I think that, to give another example than the pregnant empress, another example that I would put into that category of a trope that it would annoy me would be when a deck is full of really young people, like 20s, and you've got one older person on a card that is associated with the keyword wisdom. So rather than just representing an array of folks of different ages, or, including, at least a handful of cards of folks who are older, the one old person gets thrown in as a sign of wisdom and nothing else. And so when that happens to me, that person is not being represented as a complex, multifaceted human. It's just kind of like, here's an old person, right? And I don't like that. So that is a trope that annoys me. Number 2, which deck do you feel is overrated? The question that, will inevitably yield some disagreement. I will say decks that I feel are overrated: Bohemian Gothic Tarot, Victorian Romantic Tarot. I consider these decks to be highly rated in the sense that, when they're on sale new, they have been expensive. When they go out of print, they can definitely be expensive. The Baba Studios decks are raved about by many. They're certainly raved about in terms of their production quality. I can't comment on the production quality. I have no doubt that they are fantastic in that regard, because people just, mention the card stock and the packaging and all of these things being beautiful, and that's all well and good. But a deck could have the fanciest production quality in the world, and if I don't like the deck, I don't care, because I'm never going to buy it. So I feel like, these are decks that I don't get it. Sure, I understand the appeal of good production quality, but like as decks, like aesthetically, as decks to read with, I don't get it. And maybe Baba Studios decks, full stop, I feel are overrated. I don't get it. I've never wanted to buy one. Of course, these things are down to personal taste, but I don't get it. So that's overrated to me. Number 3, what are your least favorite decks you've seen since joining TarotTube? There are quite a few. There are quite a few that I could say, but the one that stuck out in my mind is actually one that, I have seen since joining TarotTube, but not on TarotTube because it isn't even out yet, I don't think. Tarot of Curious Creatures by Chris Ann. People know that the animal head on human body is a deck deterrent for me. It's not a thing that I love, and this deck is all animal heads on human bodies. So, I mean, if a deck was ever going to be my least favorite, there it is. Question number 4. What is one card that has ruined a deck for you? This doesn't really happen to me very often. I feel like generally if I don't like one card in a deck, I probably don't like at least some other cards in a deck as well. There'll be at least a handful that I don't like. I have mentioned before that I have issue with the Devil card in the Slow Tarot. But I've never had this happen with a deck that I've actually purchased. Like, I've never had a deck in my collection that was ruined for me because of one card in the deck. That said, I do have Oracle decks in my collection that I have bought knowing that there were cards that I did not care for, but because it's an Oracle deck, I feel like I can just leave the card out. So there are a couple of cards in the Earthbound Oracle with too many eyes, so I leave them out. I think there's 2. There's also one in the Earthbound Oracle that is a luck card with a rabbit's foot on it, which obviously I understand the association, but I just think it wasn't lucky for the rabbit, right? So I leave that one out as well. But again, it doesn't really ruin the deck for me because I can still use the deck and just leave the card aside. With tarot, though, I wouldn't do that personally. I feel like I would feel weird leaving out one tarot card out of a tarot deck because of the system. But Oracle, I may actually buy an Oracle deck knowing that I'm going to leave a card out, or knowing that I'm leaving a couple of cards out, provided, of course, that the reason that I'm leaving the card out is not because it's somehow problematic such that I wouldn't want to support the deck, right? Then I'm just not going to buy the deck at all. But if it's just something that I don't like aesthetically or something that I don't think will work for me, then I'll just leave it out. And then it won't ruin the deck. Question number 5. Which out-of-print deck do you wish was still in print? Delta Enduring Tarot is on my wish list and is currently out of print. I wish Delta Enduring Tarot was still in print. I also wish that the Slow Hauler Tarot and the Collective Tarot were still in print. All 3 of these are, I feel like, decks that are inclusive, and they're the kind of decks that I feel like I want there to be more of in the world. So I really wish that Delta Enduring, Slow Hauler, and the Collective Tarot were all still in print. I think that would be great. Number 6. What are some of your tarot and TarotTube pet peeves? So I already did a VR to Juliet Peekaboo Rose with a tag of deck delights and deterrents, and I feel like that covers tarot pet peeves pretty well. So here for number 6, I'm just going to do what are your TarotTube pet peeves, since tarot pet peeves is covered by deterrents. And I thought of 2. I don't really have a lot of TarotTube pet peeves because if something doesn't appeal to me as like a particular video or something like that, I just won't watch it, and it doesn't really annoy me that it's there. So the couple that I thought of, it is a pet peeve for me when there is talking over top of a background music track. Not like background noise that's happening in someone's house while they're making a video. Like, that is completely to be expected. We all have things going on. But putting a background kind of music over the talking or under the talking can be a pet peeve for me because I find it very hard to hear sometimes. So this is a bit of an accessibility thing. I find it hard to focus on and follow and clearly hear when someone is speaking if they have like particularly a louder music track going while they're speaking. That's not really TarotTube specific. That's just kind of YouTube in general though. And again, it's every creator can do what they want and can make a video however they want. It's just I find it very, very hard to hear. The other pet peeve that I thought of, TarotTube pet peeve, is this kind of comments that crop up periodically around particular kinds of content just not being good. So these kind of flippant, like unboxings aren't good, or flip throughs aren't good, or this kind of video is pointless, or whatever. And this is a pet peeve for me because I feel like, I mean, first of all, just don't watch a video you don't want to watch. That's fine. And secondly, I feel like some of these kinds of videos, and I'm particularly thinking of unboxings and flip throughs, that sometimes get put down as being pointless or as being, not really contributing anything, are, to me, some of the easier and maybe less intimidating kinds of videos for someone to make who is new to TarotTube, right? And so I feel like dismissing those kinds of content as like, oh, this isn't really, adding anything to the discourse because, oh, it's just a flip through or whatever it is, can be a bit unfair, when these are sometimes the things that let people feel comfortable coming into TarotTube, and are also, as a creator, I can tell you, kinds of videos that do get a significant number of views, do get, likes and positive comments and appreciation, and certainly that I appreciate. I'm grateful to unboxings and flip throughs that have, let me see a deck that I wasn't sure about. I think that's actually really useful. So I feel like, just the kind of deriding of particular kinds of videos is just, oh, this whole kind of video is just not good. That's a pet peeve for me. I mean, again, disclaimer, everybody is entitled to their, the perspective on that. And again, if a particular type of content is not valuable to you, that's completely fine. That's not up for me to tell you. But I don't think it's helpful to dismiss entire kind of genres of TarotTube videos as being not valuable to anyone. I don't think that's helpful. Number 7, what are some decks that you feel should get more recognition? This was a bit of a hard question because I was thinking, what does it mean to not have recognition? And I'm looking at the decks in my collection thinking like, what would I think should have more recognition than it does? And so what I ended up just going with here is a couple of decks in my collection. I just pulled 2 that are just decks that I don't see around tarot YouTube very much, and that are decks that I like. So I feel like it would be cool to see them around TarotTube more because they're great decks and I don't see them around very much. And the first one that I thought of in that respect was the Architect's Tarot by Yusuf Boucheri. I've shown this deck lots of times. I just think this artwork is really beautiful. I think the colors are really soft and nice. I think that it's a simultaneously really readable deck for somebody who's familiar with, Smith Wade or with other, more traditional decks than this is. But I also think it's a really interesting take on the tarot. There's a lot of cool kind of experiments with perspective and size in this deck. It looks really nice alongside of other decks. The Architect is an extra card. It's a cool deck. I think it's a really cool deck, and it's well made. The cardstock is good. The gilding is beautiful. I really like a lot about this deck. I use it a lot, and it's just not one I see around very much. It was a successful Kickstarter, so in terms of getting recognition, it is out there in the world in a successful way, but I'd love to see it around more because I think it's a great deck. The other one I thought of is a pretty new deck, so maybe folks just don't know about it too much. And that's the Page of Cats Tarot by Tina of Queen of Wands, who also created Naturescapes and Tarot of Architectural Objects. And this is a photorealistic cat deck. And I really love, of course, cats. And, theoretically like cat decks, but because I'm not super into really, really anthropomorphized ones, there are a lot of cat decks on the market that I don't necessarily gravitate to because there's too much like cats wearing clothing and, standing on two legs and these kind of things that just is not what I look for in a cat deck. And so this one is photos of cats, right? And so they're cats that are doing things that cats do. And I love this deck. I think this deck is fabulous. So I think, for the cat deck lovers out there and the cat lovers out there, this one, like, come on. This deck should have more recognition too. I think it's a great deck. Question number 8. What are your thoughts on negative reviews? This is a really interesting question to me, and maybe I should make another video about deck and book reviewing and what I think about those things in general, because I do have a lot of thoughts. And briefly, I think that reviews have a function, and I think that reviews ideally should be useful. I think that a review of a tarot deck should help people perhaps learn more about the deck. A deck review should help people who are perhaps on the fence, not sure if it's a deck that they're interested in, make a decision in a more informed way than they can just by looking at packaging in a store. Reviews are not the same thing as advertising, right? The point of a review to me is not to sell or promote something, right? Certainly when I do a review of a deck, it's very seldom that I'm going to do a review that's just scathing, and really, really, really overwhelmingly negative, because obviously anything in my collection, like with a very, very few exceptions, anything in my collection I have chosen and I've purchased for myself. So there's going to be some things that I like about it, right? But I think that it's still valuable to point out things that don't work for you, right, in a review. And I really think that book reviewing and deck reviewing for me are quite similar, and I do quite a bit of both, And in both cases, when I'm reviewing a deck or reviewing a book, I know that I can't really predict what someone else is looking for. I can't predict what is going to work for somebody else. A book that to me is a 5-star book might be a 1-star book to you. A deck that I love and goes straight into my top 5 may be a deck that you work with and don't really connect with and decide to pass along, right? And that's completely fine. But I feel like as a reviewer, I want to try to give information that is useful to a viewer or a reader so that they, who know for themselves what they like, what they look for, what works for them and what doesn't, so that they can make a good decision about whether or not to get a particular item or to read a particular book, to work with a particular deck, whatever it is, right? So when I'm reviewing a deck, since that's what the question is about, reviewing a deck, but it's true of a book as well, I try to think about, if someone was considering this, what would they want to know? What would they want to know that they can't know just by looking at, say, a photo of the deck, right? What might they be interested in that I might have to say? And some of that is going to be critiques, is going to be criticism. I think that critiques and criticism, is useful in that sense. I don't think of it as a negative review, quote unquote, if someone is pointing out issues with something, right? Whether it's poor research in a guidebook, whether it's lack of inclusiveness, whether it's, technical, like production issues, whatever it might be. I think that those critiques can help save people money who will learn something new and as a result not end up buying a deck that wouldn't have worked for them, right? Can help people spend their money in ways that they feel more comfortable with. You don't want to buy something and then receive it and then find out that it doesn't, align with your values or doesn't work for you in whatever way, right? I have been really appreciative of a number of, I would prefer to say, critical reviews of decks and books for that matter that I've seen. I want a review to be useful, right? And so that's my thoughts, I guess, on negative reviews. I think that a review ought to be useful, and is not the same thing as advertising. So if anything, I expect some amount of criticism in any review of a deck or a book, or most other things probably as well. So that's my mostly no disclaimers thought. I tried to keep it disclaimer free. I don't know if I succeeded or not, but there it is. I could have said a lot of different things for a lot of these questions, but this is just what's come to mind. So thank you to Katey Flowers for starting this tag, and to Wesley at 22 Zines for kind of reminding me of this tag by way of your VR. I've had fun. I will see you all again soon. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good one.